Hi, and welcome to Screens in Focus, the podcast where we talk about TV and movies. I'm Diana, and today we are talking about Cobra Kai, Season 6, Part 3, the finale. Grog is back to join me. Hi, Grog. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm happy to be at the end of this adventure.
Yes, I know you are. I'm so excited to talk about these last 5 episodes. With that, I want to get to our question of the day because I want to pose this to you, to our friends out there, and then we'll answer it at the end of the podcast episode here. All right. So, did the finale honor Mr. Miyagi's legacy the right way? Okay. Because I know that was really important to me during all of this. So I can't wait to get your take on this. So think about it. Friends out there, think about it. We're going to answer that later on. But right now, we are going to dig into these final 5 episodes that we have all been waiting for. Most of us have been waiting for. I think everybody's been waiting for it. Even you have been waiting for this because each part you were thinking it was at the end there.
Yeah, I gotta say, I wasn't eagerly awaiting because on our last podcast, I didn't even know there was going to be another set of episodes. And I was so disappointed to know I had to watch a whole another 6 episodes. But your email came and it was like, oh, it's time to go. And then you told me you binged it at midnight when it came out. I was like, okay, I better jump on it because this weekend I got a lot happening. So I need to get this done. It's probably better to strike while the iron is hot, too, right?
Yeah.
This came out. And so I guess I'm going to have to binge watch it, which I did.
It is right behind The Walking Dead. It is my favorite TV series. So it means a lot to me. And so it means a lot to me that you're here to talk with me about it. So, in saying that, I want to know what your overall impression was of the final 5 episodes.
Okay, I'll say that it was definitely better than the last 5 episodes, however, there were. Like I
Yeah.
said, I was ready to throw the towel in at the beginning of season 6. And then, you hit me up. It's like, oh, we're going to do the podcast. And since I'd already done, how many have we done now on Cobra Kai now?
We did season 5 together, and then we did all 3 of these. I think that's correct. Does that sound about
Okay.
right? Because I've
Yeah.
covered every season, but I think you have joined me for season 5 and season 6, which was 3 parts.
Yeah. And as always, I really appreciate what you do, and you kind of throw movies out there or shows like, are you watching? And then it's kind of fun to talk about it and pretend like I'm, entertainment, critic or
Yeah.
whatever. So yeah, it's fun to do. I'm happy to be here, and I'll give it that much. This was a much better season than I expected. So,
Awesome.
a lot of questions answered. And for people who, maybe if you've come this far, like you've watched, 6.5 seasons and now you're on the last one, you got to finish it off. So, I guess that's, hopefully what people will get out of it. It's, you've come this far, even me, the worst critic, I still glad I did it.
I'm so glad you did. So I was so happy with these last 5 episodes. I think it tied up so many of the storylines. We saw so many character arcs. It was bittersweet because I love this show so much. I know it was time for it to end. I think it was perfect timing, and it just has a lot of heart. So I think that's why I think these last 5 episodes were so important to the whole series and the whole franchise. And it's just, it's 40 years later. And I think that's why it means so much to me because I love the original movie. Sure, there was other movies that I like too, but the original is the one that really sticks out to me. And I think it really tied everything up. And we're going to dig into that in just a few minutes. So, in saying all that and talking about the characters and their arcs and their resolutions, what stood out to you with any of the characters?
I like the way that it tied everything up for everybody. And I guess, when the series is called Cobra Kai, right? It's not called Miyagi Do.
Mm.
This whole series should have been called Cobra Kai: The Redemption of Johnny Lawrence.
Yeah.
Johnny steals the show. He's the real reason I watched it, because he's the lovable loser, and you wanted to see Daniel kick his ass in the first movie, which he did, and then the first episode of this whole series was like, it's Johnny, it's like he's such a loser, and he's, kind of that whole cycle is like he's down, and he's, and now he comes full circle. So, but that's the big theme. But in terms of the arc of some of the other characters, I guess you could say like Tori and Robbie, they kind of shared the same success in the end. And they were both struggling with coming from like working class families or broken working class
Right.
families, and their expectation of where they were going after high school was definitely not college. And I like how the series kind of brought that up about what kids are going through with high school, although I still have to suspend my belief to think that these are actually high schoolers,
Right.
because
Yeah.
everybody looks so old. But anyway, so that was interesting to see how they kind of rose up at the end and got their successful careers. So that was one, checklist. And then on some of like the minor characters like Dimitri and Eli, the tech bros,
Yeah.
and then
Binary brothers.
oh yeah, and Dimitri throws MIT under the bus, and I'm going to Caltech. It's like, okay, thank you. And then they're both like such geeks, but they become like the cool geeks, I guess, the cool karate geeks. And Dimitri even gets laid in the last
I
episode.
know his
You know,
girlfriend returns.
parents, screening this show, who are, concerned about abstinence only program for their high schoolers, should not let their kids watch this show.
They didn't show anything. They
Hey,
went away. They came back.
yes, it's just so funny how Dimitri got busted in the last series, dancing with the girl at the bar, and his
Yeah.
girlfriend saw, and then they made up. Then they show him like they have to run off somewhere, and then they come running back at the end, and he missed the whole fight, and he's,
Right.
tucking in his gi, like, oh, what did they just go to the stairwell or something?
They figure out a way.
Yes. Yeah. And then Miguel and Samantha, that whole thing gets resolved. And I guess that was an interesting arc, because Miguel was, if you think about how the whole series started, is Miguel was the down and out kid,
Right.
living across the apartment way from Johnny, and he was the loser and the wimp, and then Johnny took him under his wing, and like Mr. Miyagi taught
Miyagi.
Daniel, but opposite, because Mr. Miyagi was a good guy trying to teach all these great values to Daniel,
Right.
and in this case, Johnny was, a total dick, teaching violence to Miguel. Like, you're Cobra Kai now, get out there, kick some ass, don't be a pussy, all that stuff. The exact opposite of what Mr. Miyagi taught. And it's interesting how they tied it all together. And then, Daniel and Amanda, I was like, oh, what was their resolution? I guess, Daniel kind of had his ghost dream with Mr. Miyagi coming to help him and stuff. And I guess, what did he really learn out of it? Because he kind of turns into like, adopting the Cobra Kai philosophy of like, you know, don't be a pussy,
That was the way he related to Johnny, though. That's how he had to kind of shake him up to have him listen to him.
Yes. Yes. So that was interesting. And then the thing I liked most about Daniel and Amanda's relationship is it kind of reminds me of my own relationship with Casey, my wife, is that they're always drinking wine and having fun.
I thought you were going to say something else. That's hilarious. I love it. I love it. So, oh, you brought up so many great points, Grog. I'm so glad. So, with Johnny, yes, full circle. I love that I was reminded what this series was about because I always tend to lean toward Miyagi Do t-shirt. Daniel, because I love Karate Kid so much, because I love that movie so much. So I'm always pulling for that part of it. But I was reminded this is Johnny's story. It did start with him and Cobra Kai. It brought it all, but it brought it in the best way with these last 5 episodes. Like I am on board now. Like I've always appreciated Cobra Kai Johnny wise, not when it was with Kreese or anybody else. But last 5 episodes really helped me to see more of that perspective and what it meant to Johnny and how he felt and how these last 40 years have weighed on him. Just all the moments. So I love that it was full circle. And I love that we got to see that, experience that, and see it from Johnny's side. There was just so much personal growth in him. He gets married, he has his baby, he is friends with Daniel, just the way he approaches his students, just all of that played a part in this. And the when he visited his mom and how he felt in 2017, I think it was, or 2007, now I can't even remember, it might have been 2017, and how he felt at the end when he brings a picture of his family and he just looks so much better, and his sense of being is so much better. And so I just love that all for him. And then for Daniel, you were saying, what was it for him? And I think Daniel's growth was huge too, because Daniel would have reacted so differently in the first seasons of this because he was so defensive and he wasn't accepting of Cobra Kai at all. But here you see his growth. And if he hadn't had his growth, he wouldn't have rented that dojo for Johnny and said, look, do this. This is you. And so many times they each of them talked about trusting one another, which I thought was so amazing and that I loved. And that I feel like Daniel finally had his own, that epiphany finally gave him his own, I don't even know the right word, but not being disappointed in Sam because he realized that Mr. Miyagi was saying, I'm teaching you karate so you don't have to use it. And that was so pivotal because that is what shifted his perspective. And when Sam wasn't going to fight anymore, he was accepting of that. And maybe he wouldn't have been if he hadn't had that. And so I just think that that was so key for him. And then I do love their relationship, his with Amanda. I love how honest they are with each other. Like even when she tells him, look, Sam isn't going to UCLA. I'm just ripping the Band-Aid off. I'm just telling you. So they don't really hide things from each other. Yes. And they drink that wine too.
Always drinking.
Yeah. And then with the next generation, you had talked about Miguel and how he was from the beginning and how he is now. And I love how they highlighted his relationship with Johnny and how important both of them were to each other from the beginning and now. And yeah, I thought each of them, Miguel's story, Robbie's, Sam's, Tori's, I think they all learned something. And I like that they each had their moment, that Tori was able to tell the LaRussos how she felt, how she said to them, you've been so kind to me. You have been there at all the great moments. And the only other person that was ever this kind to me was my mother. So I appreciate you. I love that they gave her that moment to share that with them. So there was so many redemption arcs with these characters that was just so perfect. Johnny and Kreese, I know that was important here.
Just to tie off what you're talking about, with how it all ended. You have all these mortal enemies, starting with Daniel and Johnny right at the get go, like how Johnny and they just clashed, and then all of a sudden they're working together and they've got, co-instructors, competing dojos, and then Johnny comes over to Miyagi Do, and now they have to go back to Cobra Kai at the end, and then you're rooting for that, right?
Yeah.
And then all the conflicts with Tori and Sam and the family, and how Tori was, they were both bad to each other at times, and then they
Right.
became good friends,
Yeah.
and then so everybody kind of and even
Robbie and Miguel too.
and everybody's
Yeah.
friends. And then Chosen, bringing him back, bringing all these nemesis back, and then they're like friends. But then how do you tie off with Kreese? Because, he's the evil one. And then you've got Silver, who's the eviler one,
Yes.
or beyond all that. And it's like, well, how are you going to redeem these two terrible characters? And of course, their death does it quite well. Like, they both deserve to die, which is fitting, I guess. It's terrible. But it's a good way that Kreese actually becomes a hero at the end and blows up the boat, and no more Silver. And
in our last podcast, when we covered the middle section here, you were worried about Kreese. You're like, I don't want him for Johnny to just forgive him, like he's done all these bad things. So how did you feel about those moments between them?
yeah, I thought that Johnny was a total pussy. I mean, crying, and you abandoned me. It's like, okay, well, whatever.
I do want to bring that point up because I've always felt in a lot of different series, a lot of different movies, and even in life, no matter how old you get, your parents or your parental figure is always important to you. It just always is. And I've seen that reflected time and time again. And this is just another example of that because both Johnny and Daniel are in their 60s. And so much of it is how they feel about their father figure in their life. How Daniel felt about Mr. Miyagi and about always honoring that, and how Johnny felt about not having a father figure and then having Kreese as his father figure and what that meant to him. So I found it very believable that you hold on to these things. You hold on to them and you either resolve with them or you don't, and you just live with it. But I know it impacts people and characters and stories. So,
Yeah, that really kind of hits home. Like with my own dad, who I didn't get along with for a big part of his later life, and I did finally we kind of put the past behind us, and so I know I can identify with that
yeah.
and learn from it. Although I'm not sure that Johnny is ultimately going to learn from the whole thing. He's still going to go on being the lovable loser. I guess a lot of people can really identify that with reconciling a friendship that turned bad, and then you bury the hatchet, or a family relationship. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what life is all about, right? Is,
Yeah.
kind of forgive and both hopefully grow, which a lot of people ultimately fail to do. And, they don't learn from these experiences and shut themselves away from their family, or are exiled or self-exile or whatever. I think
Yeah.
everybody has that in their family where, it's
Yeah.
like, okay, that's the way it used to be. And it's not worth it to put things behind you. And I certainly have felt like I've done that with some of my experiences on the basketball court, which is very violent. It's a tough game. It's a brutal game. And when you play it all the time, and some of the conflicts I've had with some of my so-called friends out there,
Yeah.
where all of a sudden it's like, no, we're about ready to throw blows. Yes. But it takes two, because, I had
Yeah.
a recent conflict on the basketball court with a guy I've been playing with for about a year. big dude, and we really went at it, and we nearly got in a fight because it was the first time I ever had to guard him. This was like a few months ago. It's like this guy literally pushed me in the back, tried to push me directly into my own man who was driving into the basket. And so we could have like broke each other's skulls or whatever. And I was like, man, that's a
Wow.
fighting offense. Like I
Yeah.
was like my whole, testosterone was boiling. And it's like if I had been maybe 20 years younger, I would have like turned around and just like, let's go. And then I kind of just took the Mr. Miyagi,
Miyagi.
approach. Yeah, but I just kind of waved at him and said, no, no, don't do that anymore. And kind of de escalated it. And then after the game, I went up to him and started talking and found out that he was just starting to go through a divorce, and he was like
Mm.
really kind of like having a lot of turmoil in his life. And he's like he was, and then we exchanged phone numbers. And then I guess he went over to have dinner and went to a bar, and I guess he was still there like 5 or 6 hours later, and he texted me and he's all, Grog, I'm sorry I was such a bitch to you today. So
Oh, that's so cool. But it was your reaction to him. Really was. That diffused it. Because if you had been 20 years younger and did what you did, that would have escalated, and who knows what would have, you both would have been, you know, beat up or whatever it is. So oh wow. Well,
that
I'm
actually proves the whole redeeming
yeah.
theme that
Yes.
karate teaches you you don't have to fight.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Exactly.
know?
I love that. And you have that background.
Yep. So,
That is so cool. I'm
yeah,
sorry that happened to you, but at the same time, I think that you were very helpful in that guy's life, friend's life, and he was going through something. It reminded me of when Tori has been going through her mother's death and how her reaction was, and some of these other characters too. So, in talking about that, thank you for sharing that, by the way. But the fights and the action in this last 5 episodes, what stood out to you, or would you think about any of it?
pretty good choreography, just I still have to suspend belief about the rules. At least they weren't like fighting on platforms and stuff this
Yeah.
time, or multiple attackers and stuff that just doesn't happen. But it's like, okay, none of these competitors wear a mouthpiece. But I mean, the choreography was pretty darn good. And especially Zara and Tori,
Yeah,
who
yeah.
are both, like, we know Robbie is a really good athlete, and Zara and Tori are really good athletes. And like, it was like kind of so cool that Zara gets out there and she's doing all these,
Flips.
spinning flips through the air. And then, she's kicking Tori's ass. And then all of a sudden, I forget what pep talk Tori got out of it, but then she turns around and she starts doing flips. And then she, at the very end, she just like kicks her to the face, and you see all the blood fly out of it.
Yeah, that was so cool. And then wasn't her tooth? I think it was her tooth.
Oh, was it? Oh, okay.
I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure it was her tooth. And then
Yeah.
she tells her, "Welcome to the valley, bitch." It was so
Yeah.
good. Sorry, it was
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
good.
That's
And
good.
and and what's funny is that the first, 4 seasons, we didn't like Tori, or I didn't, because she was a bully to Sam, and she was just a bully. I know Sam didn't treat her nice, but we see Tori's background and what she went through, and so, but it was Robbie telling her he loved her because he wasn't going to coach her. He saw, I was just going to tell you I love you. And then that just like set her straight, set her, recalibrated her thoughts, because when Johnny was trying to coach her, she wasn't even hearing it. She
Right.
was,
Right.
she was
Just
too
blah,
much in
blah,
her
blah.
head. Yeah.
Yeah. All you need is love.
Yeah. Any of the other fights stick out to you besides that one?
Yeah. I mean, I guess, the Miguel. and Axel fight, none of the Cobra Kai or Miyagi-Do fighters ever lose because they're not the best. They always lose because the other side cheated or something. Like Robbie was coming back against Axel and then he gets his leg broke or whatever.
Right.
And then Wolf tells,
Horrible.
yeah, and Wolf tells Axel to target Miguel's spine, and it's like, oh, it could be so bad, and they overcome. So, yeah, I mean, it was good to see Miguel triumph, and everything that happened had that we wanted to happen happened. I mean, Johnny wins at the end, and he's getting his ass kicked, and he got kind of beat up in the locker room. When Wolf came
Oh,
to
yeah.
threaten him and threaten his family, and put him in an arm lock, and of course that's the big ending. Is that's kind of interesting the way it's set up. Is that Johnny's getting his ass kicked, and Chosen tells Daniel to do something, and Daniel tells him, "Stop being a pussy," or whatever he said. It's like the opposite of what Miyagi would have
Right.
said.
Right.
But then Johnny is in there, and Wolf is like, "Yeah, I'm gonna come and waste you." And then he's thinking about the crane move that Daniel did on him, and it's
Yes.
don't be aggressive, be defensive. And it's like, oh, okay, he learned the lesson of Miyagi Do,
Yeah.
that it saved him at the end to not be so evil about your fighting. And that was good that they did that. But then, of course, to tie in with the question of the day is like, did
Okay.
they ultimately learn the lessons, So it's ambivalent.
Yeah. All the fights that you just went through were so good. Robbie getting his leg broken, that was painful. That was really painful. And it was funny because Daniel's all, "Chosen, can you do this?" Like, "Can you do the and Chosen's all, that he massage isn't gonna, that's all it is. That's not gonna work." But you wonder because Karate Kid and you're like, "Oh, okay, is this gonna come back into play?" And no, that wasn't going to work for this one. And just that moment with Robbie and Johnny when he's laying there, then they're talking. That was a pretty good conversation there. Again, another resolution about father and son because they were estranged in the very beginning of this series and now they are a family. And I love it because Robbie is grateful for everything that he does have. He's looking at the positive rather than the negative, At least, I came in second. So is it second? Well, at that point it was.
Yeah. But
So
that's
that
that's kind of, and they had to figure out how to tie off Miguel and Robbie's success, and even Sam and Tori, because they're the champs, right? And then Robbie won the original All Valley tournament. So,
wait, when Miguel won originally, because remember when they get out of the car and Robbie says to Miguel, "You won here already."
oh, I don't remember. It's so
I
far.
I know, right? I'm like, wait a minute.
I
But
thought
Robbie,
Robbie was somehow, he was like the,
yeah,
why was he the top guy? He won the kind of the,
because I think he won being the captain of Miyagi Do.
right. And so
That
he was
was,
kind of like going to be the chosen one going forward.
yeah,
And then, but, still both of them were like, you're rooting for both of them. And so that's was fitting that, Robbie, he lost, but not because he wasn't the best. He lost because, Axel cheated.
yes, yes,
And then same thing with Sam and Tori, in that Sam won by just, kind of like pulling a Yoda on the whole thing, like strike me down, I'll become stronger. Like she just kind of just like bowed out of it and was like, this, I don't matter anymore. And it's like she was still a champion, so she got to go away, on her own terms. And then Tori had her redemption, and then Robbie and Tori become the karate superstars. And it was kind of interesting though how Tori had to suffer through Zara being this flashy social media personality
Yeah,
and blowing kisses to
the
everybody.
audience.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but just being really just kind of like a kind of two-faced bitch behind it all.
Yeah.
And Tori looking at her and like seeing her behave that way. And then at the end, it's like, oh, now Tori is going to be a social media influencer.
Yeah, I
Giving
love it.
autographs. It's like, okay, I hope you learned something, Tori. So that's
I think
interesting.
she did. I think she did. I wanted to bring up Daniel, and he didn't really have to fight anybody, but they did show a part that was in a dream. So that was his, I guess, last karate moves that we saw, but we saw him as a sensei here, which I thought was really key, really important. And I love that relationship between him and Johnny these last 5 episodes, how they were just totally in a different way than they have been. And they trust each other. They talked about it several times. They just approach each other differently. And I love that Johnny asked Daniel, he says, "Can you put on that gi one more time? I know you just took it off." And Daniel says, "I'm so glad you asked." And when Johnny was fighting, I did want to know your reaction. What did you think about that? And I'll get back to my Daniel being sensei, but what did you think? I was surprised. I didn't know it was going to go there because we see that they're tied, right? Cobra Kai and Iron Dragon. And all
Yeah.
of a sudden, it comes out that the only way to win, the dojo to win, is a tiebreaker. And a tiebreaker is the senseis have to fight each other. And
Yes.
so here we have this muscular, athletic, 5, 7 time winner. I can't remember how many there is for Sensei Wolf, and he has to go against, Johnny Lawrence here. So
Yes. That flipped the whole series back into the positive, column for me, because up until that part, and I was watching it and still being, you know, kind of sarcastic grog downer on the whole thing. Like, like really, I gotta watch this series. But still, I I got, I still love all the laughs I got from it, because it was there's a lot of comedy that because go
I
ahead.
did laugh. No, I was going to say I did have many laughs. Most of them were around Johnny, but like when he was proposing, he's cutting the neighbor's flowers to get the flowers and trying to cook and
Yeah.
trying on suits. Okay, so there were comedic
Yeah.
moments, and also Eli and Dimitri. They are funny together, and I love watching them. They just the things that they do. Oh, we didn't talk about that. Sorry, we're going to get back to what you were just saying, but where they put that gear on and they had Miguel look like Axel and they were fighting, but it was Miguel's voice. Oh my god, I was dying. It was funny. I thought that
Yeah.
was pretty funny.
Yeah. Well, that's the I guess the good thing about the whole series is that I mean I don't know how many times I've said this, but I'm watching a show that's supposed to be a comedy and I don't laugh at all. It's like really
Yeah.
this is not making me laugh, but I definitely do laugh on a lot of the stuff that they did. Although, and I've covered this the last podcast, is that some of the humor that they resorted to was
Yeah.
very juvenile and kind of like really that's the best you could do. But in terms of flipping the switch for me is when all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's tied up and the sensei's gotta fight. And then there's the scene where Miguel has joined Cobra Kai and he comes out and Johnny is his coach and they're playing ACDC Thunderstruck.
Yes, Thunderstruck.
Gosh, finally. And I was like, that was like actually cheered, like, yes, finally. And I was like, really? Okay, I'm gonna tell Diana about that. That was like the whole thing
It
that pivoted
was.
the show to
Yes.
me. Like,
Yeah.
okay, Thunderstruck, yeah, great. That was a great scene.
I loved it. I did too. That got me up in my seat. I was so excited. The song, the music, uh, Miguel walking out, Tori walking out, and then here comes, well, I was it at that point, I think, and then here comes Johnny Lawrence. That was
Yeah,
very, very cool. But I
yeah,
wondered, I'm like, how is he going to fight against this guy? What's going to happen? And I love that whole sequence with going back to Daniel, teaching him. I loved how it opened up with them in the car when they're driving in the car and we're seeing all the landmarks of Los Angeles and their area, Encino, and just recognizing all those different landmarks that they were showing. I just thought it was a really cool way to just kind of honor where they came from, their city, and then they go on the beach and they're doing they're standing on those pillars and trying to hold that pose. They were having a hard time balancing. I'm sure it's not easy, but they were kind of teetering a little bit and just running on the beach and running down the street. And I don't know, I just appreciated seeing that. And I love how Daniel gives Johnny that pep talk about Rocky, how Rocky 1 was very important. You might like the others, I know, but 1 was really important because it showed heart and even if you don't win, just how far you've come. But in saying that, I do want to say it was so important for Johnny to win because it just was. He had to in his heart because maybe for other people coming in second, just like Robbie saying, "Look, I came in second and that's good enough because I have all these things." But I think that Johnny really had something to prove. And Johnny's Johnny, he's just his generation, it just needed to happen because of everything that he had gone through before. So that fight was very pivotal for him and I loved Miyagi-Do's influence through Daniel coming through on this. And I did think, I don't know about you, and I know that on social media this has been a thing too. Did you think that Johnny was going to do the kick? And I for a minute did think he was going to do the kick, the crane kick that Daniel
yeah,
did. I'm like, "Oh my god, is it coming?" And I got excited about it, but after reading other people's comments, it made total sense why it didn't because Johnny won his way. Not his way, but with Miyagi influence. And what I mean by his way is he swept the leg. He swept the leg on his opponent,
yeah,
but it was through Daniel being his sensei and getting back that balance and not barreling in like he would have and stepping back. And I love the look that Johnny turns around and gives to Daniel, and Daniel nods his head just like Mr. Miyagi nodded to him. So I loved all these little Easter eggs that we got. And then, he steps back and he's like, okay, he's doing it. And
yeah. That's the way it had to end. And I guess I kind of lost, my vision of the whole show kind of throughout in terms of like, I don't remember actually ever thinking, why is it called Cobra Kai? And it's like,
yeah,
oh, it's called Cobra Kai for a reason. That's why I say it's the redemption of Johnny Lawrence. That's what
yeah.
the whole series is about. But then maybe we should just get to the question of the day.
So the question of the day is, did the finale honor Mr. Miyagi's legacy the right way?
Right. Okay. So that's what I wanted. I've been kind of avoiding that, but I think this is a
Okay.
good time to
All
talk about
right.
it
Yeah.
because I do not think it did. Because, yes, Johnny does learn ultimately, but like, okay, nonviolence, like, this whole thing, like, don't be an ass. But then at the end, when he's in front of his students and he's like making fun of them and calling the guy with glasses four eyes and you're dork and just he's got Stingray as his kind of helper. It's like, no, Stingray, that's not showing me that they, they up their game here. That means like it's back to where it was. So yeah, but then and he's in front of the sign that, what does it say? It's like strike hard, strike first, no mercy or whatever. And then he's like, well, we're also going to learn Miyagi-Do self-defense too. So it's kind of like, yeah, okay. So he kind of did learn, but and then Daniel giving Johnny the prep talk and telling him to, stop being a pussy. It's like, no, did Daniel really learn, or Daniel kind of got pushed over to the dark side here more than Johnny came over to the good side? So I do not believe they achieved the objective.
The objective. I like that. So I kind of agree with you on certain things. I agree with, did they honor Miyagi Do's legacy? Yes and no for me. Yes, because they showed so many pieces throughout this series that Daniel shared with everybody. Like, a lot of the wins were because they did have balance and they did have some Miyagi-Do techniques in there. But I wanted more. I didn't get it quite as much as I wanted to. That's how I felt about it. And
Yeah,
I
I mean,
and
they stepped on it like when they're in the sushi restaurant and Daniel's about ready to get the fly with the chopsticks, and
yeah.
Johnny just goes, it's like, oh, you just shit all over Miyagi-Do again. It's like, patient
But
here.
but this is Cobra Kai, like you said, and like I've come to realize, this is Cobra Kai. This is Johnny's perspective or his position. But I think with that, I do think they highlighted so much of what Daniel learned and Miyagi shared. And again, because a lot of these wins would not have been possible. Johnny would not have won if he went barreling in. I really truly don't believe it. If he went just going in, I think that Sensei Wolf would have just obliterated him. But because he did what Daniel did, I think that helped. And I think that helped when Sam won, when she has won previously. That has worked for her. That has worked for Robbie. And so I think there is a balance, and I think that's what they're trying to show. And I think that's why the end is with Johnny being still that personality, because you can't get rid of his personality. He's still going to be who he is. I just think he's going to have a kinder approach, and he's going to allow lessons from Miyagi-Do, because before he wouldn't have. Before, he wanted it all his way and he wanted nothing with Miyagi-Do. And same thing with Daniel in Miyagi-Do. He wanted nothing with Cobra Kai, but now they see the benefits of both. And I think we learned that. I don't know if it was season 5 that we learned that, when Johnny was training Sam and such, and she was saying, I need both. I need to do both of these. I can't just do it one way, because she was curious about what Johnny had to teach, but at the same time, she needed the balance that Miyagi-Do gave her. So, yeah, does it honor it? I don't know. You say not really, and I kind of say I wanted more. So that's how we feel about that. So, friends out there, what do you think? Did Cobra Kai honor Mr. Miyagi's legacy? We would love for you to let us know. You can comment here, wherever you're watching us, wherever you're listening. You can get to all of our social media on screensandfocus.com. And you can even call us at 669-223-8542. All right. So I want to know, Grog, what are your final impressions of this? Were you satisfied?
Yes, I would just say, instead of 6 seasons, they should have done like 4. But yeah, I mean, oh, and there's going to be a new Cobra Kai, or not, of a Karate Kid movie coming out,
Yep.
right? They
Yep.
said, so
Yep.
I might want to see that when it comes to Netflix. I'm not. I don't think I'm going to go to the movies to see it, but we'll see. But overall, I
We should
guess,
watch that somehow.
yeah,
You come here, I'll go there. We should go watch it.
okay, yeah, we can do. All right.
I'm
Well,
just saying that. We'll see. I don't know
yeah,
if it'll happen, but
this
anyway,
should be a good movie. It's a
yeah.
good story. It's a really good story.
So I can say for me, I was totally satisfied. I felt so good about these episodes. A lot of series don't end well. There are so many that don't end well. And I think it's because the creators love this the movies, what it means. They really took it to heart. So I think because of that, they say so much. We are fans. We are fans of this series, a movie. That's why we brought it back. And so I think it was in good hands. And so I'm so glad the way it ended. Sure, there were a couple of things. The only kind of miss, besides not more Miyagi Do, but the miss for me was a little bit of that CGI of Mr. Miyagi. I know it was a dream and it did look pretty good, but it wasn't my favorite part of it. I'm like, I'm so glad that they're trying to honor Mr. Miyagi, but it just didn't feel wholeheartedly Mr. Miyagi. I know it was a dream, and I'm so glad because it helped Daniel and he had that epiphany with it. But I think I wanted a little bit more out of that scene. So I would say for me, that was one of the pieces that was lacking a bit. But yeah, I love the send off. A lot of people question Crease and Silver dying, and did they know? Did Johnny and Daniel know? Well, of course, they'll find out at some point. The only thing I think is that I wish that Johnny would have known that Crease actually had his back, because I think that's why he did it. I think that's why he went back, because he didn't want Silver to do anything to Johnny. And I like when Silver says to him, "Oh, Johnny's always been your weakness, this and this." And he says, "No, he's not my weakness. He's my strength." I thought that was pretty cool for him to say that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I mean, I would just say that the whole Cobra Kai philosophy, the whole, evil philosophy of the twisted characters of Silver and Crease and influencing Johnny and turning Johnny into a, kind of a lovable asshole. But, they say, Cobra Kai never dies.
Oh, I do think it does never die. And I love that even Daniel says that. He's all, "Didn't you hear Silver?" He's all, "Cobra Kai never dies." And what I love that about when Daniel said it is because Daniel has overcome so much, it doesn't bother him anymore, because he sees Cobra Kai as his friend Johnny, and he doesn't let it bother him. It's like Daniel has finally gotten to a point, because that was always Daniel's downfall, was that it always pushed his buttons, and he finally figured out a way to have inner peace, that those things didn't bother him anymore. We didn't get to our favorite part. Maybe we should talk about that.
Oh, I kind of already did talk about my my favorite part where Miguel is, going to fight for Cobra Kai and Johnny,
I
or no,
love that part.
Johnny comes out and then the ACDC. That was
Yes.
my favorite part. Just
Yes.
yeah.
I,
So
I love that part. I agree with you, but there's so much that I loved. I would say that was one of the biggest highlights. I loved it. I was get up in my chair cheering, like I said. But the other part was even what you had mentioned, and it's not this specific part, but it's what it represents, but how you talked about at the end when with the chopsticks. And I think why that moment was important to me was because I think it solidified so much. I think it solidified what was important to Daniel, and it's Mr. Miyagi, his lessons, his memories, what they mean to him, and because that was an important part in Karate Kid. And also, and it was in Ralph Macchio's book too that I read, that's very good. So anybody, please go get that book. It's really good insight into the whole Karate Kid movie and Ralph Macchio's life, but a lot of it contains Karate Kid. Anyway, but how important that scene was and what they did to film it. But also with Johnny coming and killing that fly and saying no mercy, it's about those two becoming friends, what when they were first enemies, and showing a little bit of Miyagi-Do and Cobra Kai and now how they work together. And just that look on Daniel's face as when Johnny does that, it's like, this is my friend who I'm just gonna have to put up with him and what he does and his antics, but we're friends and we trust each other and we care about each other. And so I really appreciated that whole scene because of everything that we saw leading up to that. But the part that I wanted to ask you that I thought was interesting is right before that scene, they had two guys talking about Back to the Future, which I thought was interesting. Did you catch that? They were talking about Hill Valley, they were talking about alternate universe, they were mentioning the actors' last names. So I'm like, why are they bringing that up? That was so interesting that they brought up Back to the Future. I didn't catch this or not, but I wonder if it was any of the creators that were talking about it.
Yeah, I
Uh,
don't actually remember that at all. So I
yeah,
just,
it caught my ear because I said Hill Valley 84 and Hill Valley is Back to the Future. And when I watched it the second time, the last names that they were mentioning, a couple of, rang in my head. And then one of them said Crispin. So these names, all of a sudden I was grabbing at the pieces. So I just thought that was interesting. I thought they were trying to spill the beans about the future. And the whole reason I brought this up was because you said you were done with Cobra Kai, but I think there could be spin-offs. I'm just pre-warning you now. I don't know that you'll watch them, but I'm just letting you know. I think that Sam and her going to Okinawa and Miguel following her, which I thought was a perfect end to, you guys. I was happy about that because I kept saying, how is Miguel not seeing off his girlfriend? And then when he came and he went with her, I love that part that he's going to go spend the summer with her. But I don't know. I think that might mean something. That might mean something. So I'm just planting the seed there. And in real life, I had told you that the characters, Peyton List, who is Tori, I told you last time that she is with Jacob, who plays Eli. They're together in real life. They've been together in real life. But on the red carpet, when this premiered, it was announced that Tanner Buchanan, who plays Robbie, and Mary Mouser, who plays Sam, are engaged. Yeah. I was like, "What?" I didn't even know they were together. I thought it was fake news. I'm like, "This is fake." I haven't heard anything about them being together. I know he had a different girlfriend for not that long ago, but no, they've confirmed it on their Instagram, which I thought was
wow.
really interesting and kind of cool. Kind of cool that there's been relationships from this whole series. So,
Yeah, I haven't followed it that deeply. And I started watching, there was another spin-off with the writers that they had. Did you watch that stuff?
oh,
Like Inside Cobra Kai or whatever. I don't know what it's called, but they were interviewing the characters, and those two together were, reminiscing. All the characters were kind of
yeah.
reminiscing about everything. And that made me realize that, as hard as I've been on the series from a critical standpoint, that I'm a fan of the actors, seeing them talk about it and seeing what they got out of it and their
Yeah.
passion for
Yeah.
what they were doing. Like they were all in on this thing.
Yes.
So good for them, that they're together and, all of them. But as far as spinoff goes, no, I will probably not watch a spinoff of this unless it's like resolving Tori and Zara. I'd probably watch that because I think those were like the best athletes on the whole thing. And then they still have, an axe to grind with each other. So But no, I'm not going to follow, any other spin-offs. But like I said, I probably will watch the remake of the Karate Kid
Yeah.
movie.
Did you have anything else you want to say about Cobra Kai? And then we'll move on to.
Just the last thing, like we were going to talk about, is some of the favorite kind of Johnny quotes, and in terms of what were some of the things that happened during the course of the last few episodes. And I was kind of watching that scene where Robbie is in front of the school counselor with Johnny
Oh,
and Carmen, and then his mom and whoever her partner is or whatever.
yeah.
And they're like trying to figure out, like, he's a world champion, it's like, and it's like, yeah, you can go to trade school. And then he has this image
Oh,
of Johnny, he sees the picture of the guy, the tradesman, is like, oh, John, I want to be my dad. So that was kind of cool how they tied off that. No, he became a champion, martial artist. But there's always belly laughs, but just belly laughs I got out of it. But just the fact of Johnny's proposal to Carmen, he planned out this big intricate thing for her, which is part of his redemption, that he was going
yeah.
all in on her. And then she goes into labor, and he proposes to her, right before she gives birth, and he brings in the whole orchestra, and it's like, yeah, marriage is, it's about the family, everybody's there, they're all so happy. And then all of a sudden it's like, when his pastor friend
Pastor friend from the
said,
past, from he was a Cobra Kai guy.
all
Yeah.
right, do you take her? He's like, the wedding band is all, hell yeah. It's not like I do, it's like, hell yeah. And then at the end, where it's like, okay, now she's actually going to pop the baby out. And Johnny says to the whole group, it's like, thanks for coming, now get the hell out, move your asses. It's like, you can't get any more crass than that. But that's what makes you laugh.
Yeah. I
That's good
loved it.
writing.
Yeah, it is. It was good. I loved it all. And we had talked before we pressed record how we didn't really see Kenny and we didn't really see Anthony. It was just barely like up in the stands, which I found so interesting. Even when they were celebrating Daniel's anniversary of the dealership, well, not Daniel, but Daniel and Amanda's dealership, they had Sam there, they had all the other people there, but Anthony wasn't there, and I thought, "This is really weird." Unless Anthony's off doing something on his own, the actor. I just thought that was weird. I'm like, he is a part of the family, and he wasn't at any of these pivotal moments. So I found that a little bit interesting. And like you had mentioned, Kenny wasn't there. And then they did bring in Stingray for a moment. And I was kind of happy to see him for just a few minutes. That was all that we needed for that. I did like how they tied up Chosen and they tied up Kim's and her dealing with her grandfather, which I was a little bit surprised of what of her ending up killing him. But you
Yeah.
know, but he said perfect when he died.
Yeah,
So
right,
I'm
right.
like,
Then that was
okay.
that whole backstory is kind of like, because then they went there, and then she just kind of like completely disappeared for like the rest of all the episodes, until the very end where Chosen shows up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you had to tie it off that way, but I guess you can't just like tie off every single character, or we'd have a whole another set of episodes to get through.
Okay, wait, I have to bring something up really important. I can't believe we didn't talk about it, but we're going to just bring this up and we're going to move on. Mr. Miyagi's secret. We were waiting to find out what that was. And I thought it was going to be this whole take up this whole time because I'm like, oh my gosh, we got to know what the secret is. How is Daniel going to deal with it? And it ended up being like fixed or came into play like 3 minutes of the whole series. And it was basically about that necklace. When Daniel's mom gives the necklace to Sam for graduation, it's those pearls. It ends up being Mr. Miyagi's mother's, yeah, Mr. Miyagi's mother's, his wife. No, but the mother gave it to the wife, so the wife
Oh,
had him. The wife died, and a guard took, because she was in a camp. an imprisoned
Right.
camp. The guard took them, and so Mr. Miyagi went to get them, and they got in a fight. But of course, it was written up not accurately, which is not surprising because so much of that happens in real life. But it was that Daniel just took this pieces of information and he knew that, but they never brought up Mr. Miyagi fighting in Sekai Takai and why he had blood on his headband.
Well, maybe you'll get your wish, and the writers will make that the spinoff of Mr. Miyagi. It'll be his, his
Maybe,
story.
but I just that was a little piece for me. So the whole Miyagi Do, what we were talking about, was that satisfactory. So I got some loose ends when it comes to Mr. Miyagi that I want hopefully completed with either a spinoff or in the movie. So
Just
anyway,
prove, just proves the series was too long.
no, I need more. No, I'm just kidding. All right. I think it ended right. So I'm happy about the series. And Grog, I'm so happy that you watched it with me, for everyone out there, and that you talked with me about it. So
And I give a tentative thumbs up on the series.
I love it. I love it.
Now I feel like we're in the Siskel and Ebert, mode. I was watching YouTube the other day and I saw Siskel and Ebert, and it was a review of, forget what movies, but they started talking about Aliens, which is my favorite movie of
Mm-hmm.
all time. If you want to go
Mm-hmm.
back to what are my movie recommendations, and I don't got a lot of great movie recommendations, but that's my favorite sci-fi movie of all
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And I forget which one of Siskel and Ebert, the Balder dude.
Uh-huh.
Do you know
I think
which
that's
one?
Siskel. I believe it's Siskel.
Yeah, he gave Aliens a thumbs down.
Oh
So,
my gosh. Well, he wasn't always my favorite of the two. Like, I didn't always agree with him, by the way. So,
yeah,
and I don't agree with him on that. Come on,
yeah,
Aliens, that's incredible. That is one of my favorite sci-fi films. I
yeah.
agree. I agree.
Well, he gave his reason was that the way that they kind of used Newt, the young girl, as kind of like a bait to kind of keep you into the story, and like they're trying to save her. The alien's going to eat her, and why do we want to do that to children? And I was like, wow, that's a real high moral standard, that they had back in the 80s, which does not exist today in the movies. They'll exploit anything they can for entertainment value. But that just ties in with kind of, what else is out there, movie recommendations, TV show recommendations. And I have a couple ideas, but I'm interested in what some of yours are.
Well, I would love to segue here into our TV and movie recommendations. So, do you want me to share mine or do you want to share
Yes.
yours
Yeah,
first?
go ahead.
For television series, I just finished Vikings.
Oh,
So
yes.
I just finished it last night. Mike and I watched the last two episodes. I love that series. I'm excited to watch Valhalla. And I know I was really late to the party, but Jonathan was like, Mom, you got to watch this. You got to watch. My son, he says, you must watch this. You'll love it. It
Yeah,
has to do
I
with
told
different.
you that too, though. I made a big, oh
Probably. I'm
yeah.
sure you
No, I've
did.
been telling you that for years.
So, yeah, I finished it, loved it. It was awesome. The last season, I was like, okay, it was one of those ones because we are loyal, we want to watch, but I miss all the original characters. Oh man, Bjorn. Wow. I don't want to give it away for anybody who hasn't watched it, but that was a highlight for me, a real big highlight for me.
It's one of my favorite series ever on TV. And
Mm.
that's where we got introduced to Travis
Oh yeah,
Fimmel, right? Is
Fimmel,
it Fimmel? Fimmel?
Fimmel, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And he always pops up now, and everything he does, I just love. And because he's such a unique kind of character, and he's got the thing with his eyes going on, and then he just recently appeared in the new Dune series, which
Yeah.
is like great. Like, okay, that definitely kept me in on, on that. I actually recommend that anybody who doesn't get Dune is do something that people don't do a lot of these days and go back and read the darn books, the whole
Mm.
Frank Herbert series. I think there's 5 books in the series, and it is just one of the greatest science fiction series of all time, and it's really deep and it blows doors on like just about any other series you can think of, and like all the political and societal intrigue, and it's just a great movie. And I think the movies actually do justice to the book. The latest one did. I mean, even the one back in the 80s, but I thought that was, for the time, it was actually not a bad portrayal of the movie. But anything that Travis Fimmel does is like good with me. And it's funny because like we were watching Raised by Wolves, and I watched the first episode by myself, and I didn't recognize Travis Fimmel
Oh,
in.
he's in that too?
Yes, yes, and I didn't recognize him, but I was gonna that just also kind of ties in with Cobra Kai. Is like, when you're watching a series and you're just really not into it, like you're kind of like giving it a try, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh, you give up on it, right? And on Raised by Wolves, which I do recommend, the first series, not the second one, it wasn't as good, but
Season?
the
The
first
first
season, yeah.
season, yeah.
So 40 minutes into it, then there's this change where the scene happens where you're like, oh my goodness, it's like the red wedding in Game of Thrones. It's like, oh my goodness, now I'm gonna definitely watch
Ah.
this. And so then I tell KC about it. And I go, you gotta watch this. You gotta watch this with me. And so when the next episode came out and we were watching it, and it was like the second episode, and like Karen's just like, oh, that's Ragnar. And I was like, oh, you're right. Like I just recognized him, and then I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm down with this. But
Yeah.
but then it kind of fell apart in the second
Second season. Aw.
season. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I feel like I'm a fan of the actor too. So I will go back and start Dune again, and Raised by Wolves. I might have done the same thing. I might have started it, not finished it. So I have to give those a chance again. The other series that I'm really liking right now is Paradise, and it's on Hulu. Have you seen this yet?
I don't have Hulu.
Oh my god. All right. Well, I think it might be on FX. I'm not sure. This is with Sterling K. Brown, Dan Fogelman. I'm not sure if I have that name correct. This is a political thriller, but it really is much, much more than that. You think it's a political thriller only, but it flips it on its head. The first episode, something happens that just opens up the world, and it's just really, really good. It's has 5 episodes out right now, and I'm really enjoying it. It's really well written, great actors, and I'm enjoying that. So I don't know. I don't know what you're going to do without Hulu. Now I know you have Apple Plus TV. Do you watch? Oh no, you don't have that either.
Well, either no.
Oh my gosh, because Severance is on there. Severance is it is freaking mind blowing. Like, so I have to keep up. It's so like cerebral, like you're like, because it has to do with, okay, in a nutshell, it has to do with people's brains, minds being severed when they go to work. They opt in, so when they go to work, their brain is severed and they're called innies. Okay. So when you're out in your outside world, your regular life, you're considered an outie. But when you go to work for this company called Lumen, you become an innie, and your innie doesn't know anything about your outie, and your outie doesn't know anything about your innie. And that's why it's such a brain F.
Yeah,
You're like,
didn't they do? They did a parody on that on like Saturday Night Live or
oh,
something.
probably,
Yeah,
probably. And
yeah.
so that show, wow, it's incredibly written. I know that Ben Stiller directs many of the episodes. So good. I've always know I love watching his comedic roles that he does, but to see him as a director, he is so good. So that is another show that I would recommend that you can't watch either.
Oh,
The only movies that I've seen, I did go see The Brutalist with Adrian Brody, and I watched that because Oscars, and I will be doing an Oscars podcast, so look for that. But it was a good movie. I don't think it's for everybody. I appreciated it. I thought the performance was outstanding, but it was long. There was an intermission. It was like 3 hours and 35 minutes, and there was a 15-minute intermission.
wow.
But it was beautifully shot. It was done with Vista Vision, which is a different way of filming, and that you could see like just it's almost like you could see the texture of the film, which was cool. Like you're like, this is so cool looking. And then last night on Apple TV, which you're not going to be able to get either, it's a movie called The Gorge. And this is with Miles Teller and Anya Joy Taylor, if I'm saying her last name correctly. And that is interesting too. I think you would have liked this,
Is
but
she from Queen's Gambit?
yes,
Okay.
yes. And
Yes.
Miles Teller is from Whiplash and Top Gun. Miles Teller.
Okay, right. Got it. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Well, there's so much content out there on streaming platforms I don't have access to, but it all gets kind of shifted around anyway. It'll get bought by Netflix one day when it's done with it. They're done with their run on, whatever.
I thought that you had Apple Plus TV because how did you watch the Wolves one?
That's
Raised by
that's
Wolves.
HBO.
Oh.
Yep.
Huh.
Yep.
I wonder if I
And
watch it.
HBO
Okay.
has some good stuff, and I guess I'm probably gonna watch White Lotus. I've been watching it.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it. I didn't know you watched that.
Yes.
Yay.
I am a reluctant fan, I
Reluctant.
guess, of that one too. But I mean, like, it's the kind of the same theme but different characters every time.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Fargo,
Oh,
That's
me too. We
yeah,
should cover Fargo. They're so good. Oh my gosh, Grog. Okay,
they're
that's for
they
another podcast, another
they're
time.
good. Yeah, put
Yeah.
me down for Fargo. And then as far as other shows, I hate to say it, but the one show that I have watched every episode since it came out is Survivor.
Oh, me too. Me
Oh,
too.
really? And let's
Anyway.
go on to new stuff too that I wanted to talk about.
Oh,
And I saw a story today on one of the Sunday morning programs about Edward Norton because he got nominated
yes.
for the
Complete unknown.
Complete Unknown, which I did see that movie.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, have you seen it?
Yes, I did.
Oh, okay. Um, I am not a Bob Dylan fan, and
Me
I
neither.
was
But I
disappointed in
liked
the
it.
movie because they didn't talk or touch at all on All Along the Watchtower, which is a song that Bob Dylan wrote. And then, of course, it was made famous by Jimi Hendrix. And that
Mm.
song is actually my favorite song of all time. But still, I'm not a big Bob Dylan fan, although I love the lyrics. It's just incredible poetry. But more importantly, I got two veins to go on this one. One is Timothy Chalamet. He's very talented, and he played the guitar and sang, and he did a
Yeah,
really good job. I didn't see the Willy Wonka stuff. I'm
I
kind of not
did.
so much into
Good.
the musicals, but he was great in Dune, and he's just a really talented person. So I guess, I would give a mild thumbs up on Complete Unknown. But then I started thinking about Edward Norton and in a Fight Club, which is one
Yeah.
of my favorite movies of all time. And there's still some people out there who've never seen Fight Club, which amazes me because it's just such a bizarre and like twisting movie. And that features Brad Pitt, of course, which I'm a huge Brad fan for some reason. Maybe I got a
For
man
some
crush on him
reason.
or something.
A
He's
lot of
funny.
people do.
Yeah,
There's a
he's funny and talented. But
yeah.
like one movie I recommend that people see of Brad Pitt is a movie called Snatch.
I
Have you
think you
seen that one?
mentioned that before.
Yeah, and that's a Guy Ritchie film who was married to Madonna, and
Yeah.
it's just a great, gritty movie, and so it's hard to go wrong with Brad Pitt. And then, of course, he's coming out with the new movie this summer, F1, which is the Formula One racing movie. And I'm not like a car enthusiast in any way. I just like maybe Mike will really enjoy that. But I'm going to see it. I'm, looking forward to that.
There are a lot of good movies that are coming. I love movies, TV, there's so many. I can't wait to see so many of them. So, all right. Well, thank you, Grog, for those recommendations. Thank you for joining me and talking about Cobra Kai. I appreciate you. So, thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you for, keeping me interested. And I hate to ramble on, but I did watch Nesferatu. I went to go see that because you recommended that to me. And I thought it was pretty good. You know,
Yeah. You watched a lot of movies. That's so cool.
yeah, I actually went to go see that movie and I did enjoy it, because, you see the Dracula story in all its different versions.
Yeah.
And like the Bram Stoker version with Gary Oldman, Dracula, that was a really good Dracula movie. And this one, I would say it started off pretty good and it had an interesting ending. And
Yeah.
anything like William Defoe he always brings it. So yes,
Yes.
thank you for that recommendation.
Well, I'll keep them coming to you and you do the same for me.
I will.
All right. Well, again, thank you. And friends out there, thank you for joining us today. We hope something we said today resonated with you, gave you a smile, a chuckle, or even inspiration. Remember to follow Screens in Focus at screensinfocus.com and please subscribe. And remember to keep watching, keep exploring, and keep those screens in focus. And we will see you next time. Bye.
Right on.